They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the people you stood in front of like a shield. I was not ready for how cold it would feel with everyone clapping. I stood near the back of the ballroom, far from the flower arches and the towers of champagne, watching Emily glide across the parquet floor in her ivory dress. 22 years of bandages, bedtime stories, and ballet rehearsals had all led to this night. I was not her biological father, but I was the one who drove her to swim practice at 5 o'clock in the morning, filled out the free application for federal student aid, held her through 2 breakups, and paid for the entire wedding. I did not need a spotlight. I wanted a smile, a quick look my way, a thank you maybe. Instead, her mother, Karen, tapped her wine glass and took the microphone with the smooth charm of a traveling cure seller. "What a beautiful day," she said, hair sprayed into place and a voice slick with Chardonnay confidence. "Let us raise our glasses to family, to real family." People gave a polite chuckle. "And of course," she added, turning toward me without really looking, "let us thank her father. You know, her real one. Not just the stepfather who tagged along all these years." There was scattered laughter, the kind people make when they are too polite to gasp. I did not move. I did not flinch. I set my glass down, straightened my cuff, and walked out the double doors, quiet, courteous, like a ghost at my own daughter's wedding. I do not need to explain what it feels like to be erased by people who would not have made it this far without you. Some of you already know. If you are still listening, take a second to stick with me. More than 90% listen without ever subscribing, and every single one of you helps a small team tell these stories with more care and more strength. That support matters. It keeps us going. Outside, the air was cool, not biting, just enough to remind me I was still here. I walked past the valet stand and kept going down the block, not sure where my feet wanted to take me. My hands were steady. I was not angry. I was done. It is a strange feeling, realizing you are the only adult in a room full of people applauding a lie. I did not have a ride. My suit jacket was too thin for the weather. Still, I walked along the long sidewalk, passing rows of black sports utility vehicles and flower delivery vans. That is when I heard someone behind me call out in a calm, measured voice, "Sir." I turned. He was older, late 60s maybe. Lean man, gray hair, neatly parted, sharp suit, wedding program still in his hand. The kind of man who never needed to raise his voice to hold a room. He came up beside me like we had known each other for years. "I am Thomas," he said, "father of the groom." I nodded. He looked down the sidewalk, then back at me. "Walk with me." There was no pity in his tone, no heavy sympathy, just a clear thought, like he had noticed something that made him change course on the spot. We passed a bakery with the lights off for the night, and he asked me one thing. "Please do not speak to anyone yet. Let me look into something first." No explanation, no details, just that. He stopped walking. "Please." I said nothing. I nodded. That is when I understood that someone else had been watching the cracks in the paint long before it started peeling. Karen thought she could change the past by standing at a podium and tossing out a line. She thought no one would remember who paid the caterer, who moved Emily into her first dorm room, who stayed when her real father, Mark, missed birthdays and court-ordered visitation. But someone did remember. Someone who had a better seat than I ever did, and a clearer view of what was really going on. That is when everything started to shift, quietly, with no permission and no fanfare. Because when a man who has held his tongue for decades finally decides to stop protecting people who never protected him, you can bet he will not just burn the bridge. He will sell the ground under it. We walked in silence for half a block. The air had that damp, after-the-rain feeling, like everything was rinsed on the surface, while rot waited just beneath. My shoes clicked on the wet pavement. His did not. His leather soles sounded expensive. He was the kind of man who did not need to explain his choices. People assumed he had it right. "Thomas Reed," he said at last. Offering his hand like this was a business meeting instead of a man-to-man walk after a public gut punch. I shook it. "You are the one who raised Emily," he said. "She mentioned you once, years ago. I did not know what to expect. Maybe a sideways condolence. Maybe a soft, 'children do not understand.' Or worse, the usual borrowed wisdom men his age sometimes lean on about letting things go. Instead, he asked, 'You paid for the wedding, did you not?' I looked at him. He nodded to himself, like that confirmed a pattern he had already seen. The wine. That particular vineyard. Karen has never had that kind of palate. And those chairs, solid walnut. You have to reserve those about 6 months ahead. There is no way her side covered that. Certainly not the linens. Egyptian cotton, with gold-edged stitching. Someone has been investing in her image. I still said nothing. Thomas took out a small paper notepad, real paper, not a phone, and wrote something down. I work with numbers, logistics, procurement. I notice when things do not line up. Another stretch of quiet. I also noticed your name was not on the program, he added. Or the table assignments. Or the invitation I received, he said. Odd, do you not think? For someone paying the bill. He stopped and looked toward the edge of the street where the traffic lights blinked slow and sleepy. I know what that kind of razor feels like, he said, voice low. I watched it happen to my brother. His wife kept his son from him for 9 years. Told the boy his stepfather did the raising. The kid only learned the truth when the stepfather's will was read. My brother had been quietly funding the whole house the entire time. He looked back at me. When somebody rewrites the past like that, they usually slip somewhere. He reached into his coat and handed me a folded square of paper. I opened it. A receipt. $12,652. Wedding photographer deposit. Paid by bank transfer. My name on the line. I raised an eyebrow. Thomas shrugged. Public records are still public. Folks forget. I tried to hand it back. He waved me off. Keep it. You may need that. We walked again. You said you would do some digging, I finally said. He nodded. Already started. How do I know I can trust you? He smiled. Not friendly. More like a man clicking a briefcase shut after a job well done. You do not, he said. And I am not doing this for you. I stopped. He turned a little. I am doing this for my son. He deserves to know who he is marrying into. If people are revising the past now, what will they edit when he has 2 children and a mortgage? There was no arrogance in his voice. Only clarity. Like he had played this game before and won. So what now? I asked. He folded the program and slid it into his inside pocket like a file. Now you stay quiet. Do not call anyone. Do not confront anyone. Do not apologize for walking out. Let them sit with it. The silence will eat at them faster than any argument. He paused. And when I call you, answer. He turned and headed back the way we came, hands in his pockets, unbothered, like he was just out for an evening walk. I stood there a while, watching the fog of my breath fade into the night. It was not only that toast that changed something. It was the quiet after. That walk did more than any speech could have done. I arrived at that wedding thinking I would be background noise, a placeholder for the man who never showed. But for the first time in a long time, somebody had seen the part one played. And worse for them, somebody had started asking why they tried so hard to hide it. Thomas was not a sentimental man. His wife used to joke that he would grade their anniversary dinner like a quarterly report. Good presentation. Slightly underseasoned. 5 minutes late. He was not the guy who cried at father-daughter dances or posted grainy photographs on Facebook with a caption that said, "My heart." He was the sort who could spot fraud before it hit the books. And the wedding he had just left smelled like it. Later, he told me exactly what he did when he got back to his hotel room. An executive suite, paid for with his own money, even though the bride's mother had assured him everything was covered. He spread the wedding program on the desk and started a mental checklist. First red flag. Not one thank you from the bride that mentioned her stepfather. Not even a quick line. Second red flag. Karen had her hands on every vendor detail, but the math did not make sense. Thomas knows luxury when he sees it. He also has a fair idea of what a mid-level salary in human resources looks like. He took out his phone and began making calls. First, the event planner. No answer. Next, the catering company. A sleepy assistant confirmed they had received full payment 6 months earlier. Thomas asked for a copy of the invoice. The assistant hesitated. He gave his name and title. Thomas Reed, logistics executive at Harrington Freight Group. That usually worked. It worked again. A portable document format file landed in his inbox in under 5 minutes. He opened it. Paid in full by wire transfer. Sender, D. T. Mallory. Thomas stared at the name. It was not Karen. It was not Emily. He tried another vendor. The floral designer. Those absurd centerpieces with imported orchids, $14,000 of them. That did not even match the bridesmaids' dresses. Same story. Paid by the same account. D. T. Mallory. He paused. Mallory. He had heard that name before. He skimmed the program again. No mention of any Mallory. Then he remembered a passing comment from years back, when Emily was still in college. Karen had mentioned him in an offhand way. My stepfather, Darren Mallory, still tries to play dad. Thomas leaned back. Still tries. He pulled up his guest confirmation email. The sender was listed as Emily and Connor at perfectunion.events. He checked the message headers and traced the domain registration. Registered by Karen K. Henley. No one else on record. He smiled to himself. Sloppy. He opened a background check portal he still had access to from his compliance audit days. He searched Mallory, Darren Ty. He cross-referenced the billing accounts. Same man. Same bank. In under an hour, Thomas counted 5 vendor payments made by the stepfather, each in the thousands, each carefully left out of the wedding materials. He turned back to the printed program and underlined a line that now glared like blood on a white shirt. On the program, the line read, Father of the bride, and then nothing. Left blank. That was not a mistake. That was an edit. A deletion. A choice. I did not know every detail yet, but I knew enough to see this was not about forgetting to thank a person. It was deliberate. Someone had been paying for a wedding he was not supposed to exist in. Later, Thomas told me he poured a bourbon from the minibar and sat on the edge of his hotel bed. He had seen the move before in business, when a silent partner gets pushed out, not with a fight, but with a smile and a fresh logo. He knew how that story ends. Lawsuits, frozen accounts, reputations burned down without a sound. He did not know what I planned to do. I had barely said 3 full sentences during our walk. But he had the same feeling I did. If I decided to speak, I would not be yelling. I would be reading from a file. While I cooled off outside, the bridal suite still smelled like hairspray and expensive roses. Emily had kicked off her heels. The bottom of her dress was a little damp from the drizzle. Connor, Thomas's son, nursed a glass of champagne that had gone flat. The room had that heavy quiet that trails applause, except colder. Thomas went in without knocking. He never knocks when he knows he is right. Connor. Emily. I need a minute, he said. Emily looked up, caught between joy and confusion. She glanced at her new husband like he was holding the script. He was not. Thomas set a folder on the vanity and stayed standing. Who paid for this wedding? He asked, voice even. My mom and I handled everything. Emily said, too fast. We split some things, and we had help from. Help from who? Thomas said, still calm. She paused. I mean, you helped with the venue. And me? Thomas flipped open the folder. I paid for my suite, my tuxedo, and my own dinner plate. You paid nothing. Your mother? He slid over a printed invoice. She paid for a story. The florist. Then another sheet. The caterer. A third. Photography. $8,000, pre-editing. Each one stamped. Paid by D. T. Mallory. Emily's face slipped. She did not reach for the papers. She stared at them like they were starting to smoke. Connor shifted, eyes narrowing. Who is Mallory? Your father-in-law, Thomas said without looking at him. Emily opened her mouth and shut it again. She sat on the chaise, suddenly small inside lace and pearls. I do not understand, Connor said. Thomas turned to him. The man you saw walk out earlier? That is Darren Mallory. Stepdad, according to Karen. According to public records, bank statements, and the Internal Revenue Service, he is the main benefactor of this entire show. Thomas took out one more page, a copy from the guest list the planner had emailed weeks ago. Next to Darren Mallory's name, in sharp black ink, not family. Removed from formal list. He let that hang. Emily looked like she had swallowed glass. I did not write that, she said, too quick. It was not me. Thomas raised an eyebrow. It had to be my mom, she whispered. She handled the responses. Now Connor looked at her, really looked. You let him pay for everything, Thomas said. And then you helped keep him out of the program, the photos, and the toasts. Emily, this was not an oversight. This was choreography. Tears gathered, but Thomas did not soften. This is the man who put you through college, he said. Who sent checks for your textbooks before you asked. I saw the ledger. You had him cover the rehearsal dinner. Then your mother made that speech about real family. Connor spoke low. Is this true? Emily nodded, eyes down. Thomas took a breath. You married my son under the banner of gratitude and tradition. I see now it was performance. Because the man who raised you, the one who stayed, you did not just hide him. You tried to erase him. Emily stood fast. I did not mean to. But you did, Thomas said. And the difference between an accident and a decision is repetition. He turned for the door, then paused. I cannot tell you what to do next. I can tell you this. You owe that man more than a seat at the back of the room. And you may find soon he is not waiting to be invited back in. The door clicked behind him. In the quiet that followed, Emily did not cry. She stared at the empty chair in the corner, the place a man once sat during her high school piano recital, clapping with pride no one else remembered to bring. She realized he had finally stopped clapping. Thomas found Karen exactly where he expected, leaned against the open bar, drink in hand, holding court with guests who had not yet figured out the wedding had turned septic. Her laugh carried that hard, brittle edge of a person trying too much to sound untouched. Lipstick marked the rim of her glass. Another Chardonnay, her third since dessert. Thomas waited until the bartender stepped away. I would like a word, he said, tone clipped and quiet. She turned, a polite smile flashing and dying. Thomas, she said with practiced warmth. What is wrong? Is Connor having second thoughts already? He did not answer. He set a single sheet on the bar beside her glass. The florist invoice, he said. Paid in full 8 months ago. By Darren Mallory, Thomas said. Karen glanced at the invoice, then back up at him, cool as glass. Fine. He paid for a few things. He likes to feel useful. Useful? Thomas did not blink. She shrugged. He was never close with Emily. It is not my fault he kept trying to play dad when she did not need one. Except he was not trying, Thomas said, even as a level. He was doing. For more than 20 years. Paying. Showing up. Staying. What were you doing, Karen? Writing checks with his routing number and pretending they were yours? Her face flickered, defensive, then flat. Did he ask to be removed from the guest list? Thomas asked. From the ceremony? From the photographs? She set her glass down more carefully this time. Listen, she said, lowering her voice. This is my daughter's day. I am not going to let you turn it into a melodrama. Thomas slid another sheet beside the first, his vendor ledger, neat columns in black and white. Catering. Photography. Decorations. Invitations. Venue deposit. All with one thing in common. Paid by a man who was not even invited to give a toast. Karen lifted the wine, tried to sip, then stopped when she noticed the tremor in her hand. You do not understand their relationship, she said, eyes narrowing. He always made it about himself. Always tried to outshine me. Thomas stepped closer, voice so quiet she had to lean in. If you keep lying, I will speak, and I will not whisper. She went still. I do not care about your little games, he said. I care about my son. He married a woman raised on performance, by you. If this continues, I will make it known to every guest here, to every vendor, to the trustees who manage Emily's educational grant, and to the tax auditors who will be very interested in how a person on a mid-level human resources salary staged a 6-figure wedding and tried to claim deductions. Her jaw tightened. You would not. I would, Thomas said. And you know I can. For the first time that night, Karen looked cornered. No more stage smile. No more light deflection. Just the understanding that the man in front of her was not playing the upset in-law. He was reading a script she prayed no one else had seen. Thomas gathered the pages and folded them once. You have until morning to fix what can still be fixed, he said. After that, this goes public. The man you erased may not care about your embarrassment. I do. He turned and walked away, leaving her alone at the bar. She did not finish the drink. She did not return to her circle. She stared at the papers like they were written in a language she had buried years ago and now could not afford not to learn. I stood near the back when it happened next. The reception haze felt like the end of a dream. Fairy lights floating, a soft jazz line, champagne taps, and careful laughter. The dance floor sat empty, only polished wood and shadows. A photographer crouched by the cake, catching detail shots before the first slice. Thomas stepped onto the stage. No microphone test. No note cards. Just a man in a navy suit who carried more weight in silence than most do under a spotlight. The band trailed off mid-phrase. Conversations clicked to a stop. Heads turned. Karen saw him first from her front table. Her expression tightened. Emily sat beside her, smiling at the room, still believing this was a moment to remember for the right reasons. Thomas's voice went clean through the air, sharp as a blade through tulle. My name is Thomas Reed, he said. Some of you know me. Some of you smiled at me tonight. Some of you clinked glasses. Some of you believe I paid for this reception. A few awkward laughs floated up and died. I did not, he said, but I did look into who did. What I found changes the picture. Emily straightened. Connor, at her side, set his drink down. Thomas held up a thick manila folder and let it land against the podium with a soft thud. This wedding, he said, was funded largely by the man you watched walk out earlier this evening. The man named nowhere in the program. The man called Not Family, on a night meant to honor love. Gasps and murmurs rustled across the tables. He opened the folder and laid out the proof, page by page. Florist, $11,250. Paid by Darren T. Mallory. Catering, $12,800. Same payer. Photography, decor, music licensing, rehearsal dinner. Even the embossed invitations on your tables. Paid. All of it. Every transfer signed by the man who was deliberately kept out of the celebration he made possible. Emily rose. Thomas, please. He raised a hand. I am not finished. He lifted one last page, edges worn from handling. A trust account summary. Emily's college tuition, years 1 through 4, paid by the same man. I verified the financial statements. The routing numbers. Everything is traceable. Everything is quiet. And everything has been ignored. Connor looked from Thomas to Emily, then to Karen, who now had the look of someone measuring exits instead of explanations. I was not in that room when Karen hissed across the dance floor. Why are you doing this now? This is not the place. I had already stepped outside and kept going. But I saw the videos later. I heard the story from Connor and from 2 guests who called me the next day. Thomas nodded once. Correct. The place for this was during the speeches. During the father-daughter dance. During any moment when decency says the man who raised your daughter should be named. He turned to the crowd. Calm. Steady. My family does not celebrate lies. So this wedding is paused. The word landed like a dropped chandelier. A fork hit a plate. A glass cracked. The disc jockey slid off his headphones. Emily stepped forward, pale. Please, do not ruin this. Thomas looked right at her. Not cruel. Not spiteful. Just clear. I did not ruin this. You did, when you erased the man who built it. He tapped the final document on the stack and laid it on top. Now watch what falls. He left the folder on the podium and walked off the stage. No applause. No music. Only that slow, heavy quiet that shows up when the truth finally takes the microphone. Somewhere near the back, a guest whispered, Who is Darren Mallory? The answer moved through the room without words. The only man there who had nothing left to prove. The night turned thick with the kind of silence that follows after something sacred collapses. The reception drained like a leaking balloon. Guests mumbled excuses. Early flights. Babysitters. No bouquet toss. No cake cutting. Just exits and untouched favors. In the parking lot, Emily tried to call me. Her hands shook so hard she kept missing the screen. He is not answering, she said. Connor told me she tried again. Karen snapped. Try again, while yanking open the car door. Connor said he felt like somebody had pulled him out of a movie halfway through the wedding montage. He left early, Karen said. He is probably at home. Brooding. He is not sulking, Emily told her. He said her voice was flat. Not a plea. A fact. Karen ignored her. I will drive. Emily slid into the front seat. Connor followed in his own car. His headlights trailed them like a reluctant conscience. They reached my street just past midnight. My place looked the same as always. Modest. Clean. The porch light on. Every other light off. No movement in the front window. No shadow. Emily got out first and stood there, looking at the stillness. She felt something final, she told me later. Not anger. Not hurt. Just the understanding that a chapter had closed. Karen marched to the door, heels ticking like a stopwatch. She rang once. Twice. Then she started pounding. Darren, open the door. No answer. She said you were being dramatic, Connor told me. I said nothing. Emily shook her head. Karen knocked harder. You do not get to run from this. We need to talk. Nothing. Emily tried my number again. Straight to voicemail. See, Karen said, stepping back. He always does this. Every time someone calls him out. Stop, Emily said. Soft. Not a plea. A line in the sand. He is not sulking. He is gone. For the night, Karen said. He will be back. He always comes back. That is his thing. Emily looked at the dark window. She pictured the couch inside. The bookshelf I built by hand. The framed photographs I hung on purpose. Everyone centered on her. She knew, even if Karen did not. I was not coming back. Not because I was mad. Because I was finished being the quiet backup plan. Connor parked at the curb and stayed there, watching. Karen paced the porch like a director who had lost the only script she trusted. Across the street, a porch light blinked on. The neighbor stepped out in his slippers, coffee steaming, frowned gentle. "You looking for Darren?" he asked. "Yes," Karen barked. "Is he home?" The neighbor shook his head. "Nope. Left about 2 hours ago. Packed a duffel bag and 2 boxes. Took the old pickup." "Where did he go?" Emily asked. The neighbor shrugged. "Did not say." He just nodded. "He will be back," Karen said. "He cannot help himself." The neighbor took another sip. Looked at them one more time. Karen loud. Emily still, Connor unsure, and went inside. The porch light clicked off. Emily sat on the steps. The air was cold but gentle. She felt the weight of it now. Not the fear that I would leave, but the truth of how easy it had been to take me for granted. Her phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. No words. Only a photograph. She told me later she stared at it for a long time. It was a picture from years ago. She was 8 or 9. Asleep on the couch under a blanket she barely remembered. On the floor beside her, I sat with my back against the cushions, also asleep. My hand held the floppy ear of a stuffed rabbit she used to carry everywhere. No caption, no name, just the image. I sent it because I did not have anything else left to say. I had already locked the door. I had already put the spare key through the mail slot. I had already set the last of the boxes in the pickup, next to the toolbox and the old photo albums. I had not closed the door on them. I had just stopped waiting for anyone to open it. I was not at Karen's house that morning, but I know exactly how it went. I heard it from Emily, and later I read the process server's affidavit. Karen was still in her robe when the knock came. 3 sharp raps that cut through the quiet like a gavel. She shuffled to the door, barefoot, last night's mascara smudged under her eyes. She was braced for Emily with a hangover apology or some tearful question about where I had gone. Instead, a man in a charcoal suit stood on the step, briefcase in one hand, a stack of papers in the other. "Karen Henley?" he asked, checking the file. "Who is asking?" she said, eyes narrowing. "I am Jason Cole from Hallbrook Legal," he said, crisp and tidy. "You are being served." "Served? For what?" He handed her the envelope. Per Clause 4.3 of the Mallory Henley Trust Agreement, all distributions are suspended pending investigation into fraudulent representation and exclusion of a co-beneficiary. She stared at him like he was speaking Latin. "I do not. What trust? What fraud?" Jason adjusted his cuffs. "You and your daughter have both been receiving disbursements from a family trust originally structured by Darren Mallory. As of today, those payments are halted. Retroactive audits have been initiated." "He cannot do that," she snapped, color draining. "That trust was filed jointly and modified once by both parties," he said, not missing a beat. "You may recall signing the amendment 10 years ago. I have a copy. You are his former spouse. You are also a trustee with a fiduciary duty, which includes honest representation. You referred to Mr. Mallory as not family in a public setting. That triggered a clause tied to intent and identity." He opened the folder. Clause 7b. If any beneficiary or co-trustee is willfully misrepresented as unrelated for material gain, the trust may be frozen until clarity is established. Karen opened her mouth, then shut it, and looked down at the paperwork like it might disappear if she blinked long enough. "Until this is resolved," he said, "you cannot access the remaining balance. That includes the housing subsidy, Emily's deferred tuition payments, and any further wedding reimbursements." She let out a short, thin laugh. "This is ridiculous. You are just doing Thomas's dirty work." Jason reached into the briefcase and set a single sticky note on the counter. "Mr. Reed did ask me to pass along a message." Neat, block letters in his hand. This is what happens when men who stay are erased by people who did not. Karen did not move. Jason packed his folder, gave a polite nod, and left. She stood there a long time, papers limp in her hands. The legal words bled together. Fraudulent representation. Co-beneficiary. Intent. Misrepresentation. Suspended disbursements. Clause 7b. Clause 7b. Clause 7b. From the living room, Emily appeared in wrinkled bridesmaid pajamas, hair a mess, phone in her hand. "What was that?" Karen did not answer. She handed over the packet. Emily scanned the first page, then looked up hard. This is the trust. Why would he freeze? She stopped. Read the clause again. He heard the speech, she whispered. Karen sank into a chair, as if the weight of her own eraser had finally landed on her shoulders. He was not supposed to, Emily said. But he did. He did not yell, Karen said, staring at the table. He did not fight. He did not even look angry. No, Emily said. He just left and took everything with him. Outside, the wind picked up. A single petal from Emily's bridal bouquet, forgotten on the porch, lifted and drifted down the street. Neither of them saw it. They were too busy reading the line they never thought would matter. The clause that was never meant to be triggered. I was not angry. I was prepared. The morning after the service, the world outside Emily's apartment looked normal enough. Pale October gray. The kind that used to make her feel 12 years old again, bundled in sweaters, waiting for caramel apple cider. Only now her stomach turned with a different kind of nostalgia, one dipped in acid. The wedding dress still hung in its garment bag in the corner, a quiet monument to a day that blew apart before the cake was even cut. She had not eaten since the reception. She had not spoken to Connor since Thomas's speech. She could not bear to open her phone. Hundreds of messages. None from the one person she could not stop seeing in her mind. Then came a soft knock. Not Karen's frantic pounding. Not the buzzer of a delivery. Just one knock. Emily shuffled to the door barefoot, a hoodie pulled over pajamas, hair unwashed, eyes hollow. She opened it to an empty hall. Only an envelope on the mat. No postage. No name. No return address. A simple white envelope, thick with age, the kind you find in a drawer with old photographs and ticket stubs. She picked it up and closed the door with a quiet click. I slipped the envelope under Emily's door and walked away. No return address. No note on the outside. Just a simple white sleeve that had lived in a shoebox for years. I was not there when she opened it, but I know what she saw. A single photograph. She was maybe 4 years old in it. Crooked bangs, Velcro sneakers, a plastic toy microscope clutched in one hand, sitting on my lap and laughing. Behind us, the giant Tyrannosaurus skeleton at the State Science Museum hung over our heads like a ribbed thundercloud. That was the day she spilled juice on her socks and cried when the planetarium went dark. I carried her all the way home, humming the off-key tune I always used when the dark got too big. Under the picture, I left a small folded note. Block letters. Plain. No flourish in the lines, but more feeling than I could ever say out loud. I gave everything, even when I was not asked. What you took was not money. It was meaning. No name. No signature. Not even the D I used to scribble on lunch notes during school trips. She told me later her knees went out, and she slid down the wall to the floor. She had practiced an apology 100 times since that night, but it would not help. I was not waiting to hear it. I was not angry. I was finished. The note was not a message. It was the last entry in the ledger. A final line for the person who did not understand the value until the bank closed. She sat on the tile for a long while. Karen called. She let it ring. Connor texted. She deleted it unread. She kept staring at the photograph. Her on my lap. Joy without breaks. Arms thrown around me like gravity was a game. Back then she did not know what I was giving her. Steadiness. Time. A quiet kind of love that never wanted a spotlight. Just a chair at the back of the room. When the moment finally came to thank me, to honor those long years, she let her mother take the microphone. She said nothing. Now there was nothing left to say. No number to dial. No address to drive to. Just a picture and the truth that no one robbed her. She threw it away. The worst part landed slow. She understood what she had only when it was too late to give it back. A week later, Thomas held an event in a smaller ballroom across town. Not flashy. Warm. Soft amber lights. No flower walls. No ice sculpture initials. Just rows of white chairs and a navy banner on a plain stage. The room was packed with a different kind of crowd. Donors, social workers, teachers, and men with the tired eyes you only earn by showing up for years without applause. Some wore suits. Some wore flannel. Some had hands cut by work. Most of them are the kind who do not get thanked for doing the jobs other people walked away from. Thomas stood at the podium with his reading glasses down his nose. Not for effect, just because he is getting older and he stopped caring about polish. In the third row near the aisle sat a young man with a thin scar just above his collar. Former foster kid. First in his family to reach college. 2 seats over, a retired mechanic who raised his ex-girlfriend's boy for 16 years, until that kid joined the Navy and mailed him a Father's Day letter from Guam. Near the back, half in shadow, Emily sat by herself. No name tag, no table card. She was not on the response list, but she came anyway. Not to speak, not to be seen, to listen. She had not called me since the envelope. She had not answered when Thomas forwarded the filings. The trust frozen, the funds redirected to a nonprofit built in my name. Her status as a beneficiary formally dissolved. She did not contest it. What would she even say? Thomas cleared his throat. This foundation, he said, is not a revenge story. It is not even a justice story. It is a story about silence. A few heads turned. The room settled. For too long, men without titles, men who did not share blood or a last name, have done the work that got left behind. Diapers, tuition, late-night emergency rooms, holding small hands through court dates for custody fights they were not even part of. He glanced at his notes. And for that, most got nothing. Not even a line in a thank you speech. The air went solid. Emily did not move. This foundation is funded entirely by a trust once meant for a wedding, he said. From now on, it will cover scholarships, legal help, and support for men who stepped into fatherhood when no one else would, and were later told they did not count. Emily blinked hard. Thomas set his notes down and lifted one sheet. Here is the mission statement, as requested by our founding donor. He looked out across the crowd, not at Emily, straight past her. This is for the men who did not walk away until they were pushed. Silence, then a low, steady wave of applause. Honest, careful, like something sacred finally being named. Emily did not clap. She could not. Her hands were locked on the fabric of her dress until her knuckles ached white. Thomas stepped off the stage and shook hands. The young man in front, the old mechanic, the caseworker from Baltimore who raised 3 of her brother's kids. He never looked toward the back. Emily rose and slipped out the side door before the reception line formed. Outside, the air was cold and straightforward. She did not cry. She stood under a street lamp and watched her breath fog and fade, thinking about a man who once held her hand in parking lots and taught her to ride a bike by letting go before she thought she was ready. Only now did she understand. I did not let go because she was ready. I let go because I was. And instead of circling back for permission, I put my time into something that will never need me to disappear to prove it matters.